just so that we're able to hear our panelists all right. And also, if you do have a question, once they have finished answering some of my questions, there will be plenty of time for questions for y'all. It's nice to meet you, Henry and Avery, Addison, Carter, Eric, Mike, DJ, Emma, Miranda, John, Alexa, and Autumn. Thank you for joining us today. If you don't know me, I am Grant Ferguson. I am an instructor in the Department of Political Science and our Director of Outreach and Public Service Internships. I'm very excited to introduce to you our distinguished panelists today. I'll be serving in the role of moderator. And so to start off from left to right on my screen, we have Mr. William Gannon, diplomat in residence for the states of New England and a career member of the Senior Foreign Service. He helps identify and guide the wide variety of Americans who want to represent our country by pursuing career opportunities in the U.S. Department of State. We have next Ms. Courtney Rankin, JD, and Deputy District Director for U.S. Representative Kay Granger. Ms. Rankin received her law degree from Texas A&M Law School right here in Fort Worth. And we also have with us City of Fort Worth Assistant City Manager, Ms. Dana Bergdorf. Ms. Bergdorf received her master's in city planning from MIT and has also worked as the Deputy Planning Director for the City of Fort Worth. Could I have a round of applause for our three panelists? Well, to get started, I thought that I would have them introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about what they do. And so if you'd like to start off, Bill, just please describe your career path in government, including kind of your current role and your general responsibilities.
Sure, thanks. Thanks so much for having me. Normally, this would be the diplomat in residence for Texas, Chris Sievertson, and she couldn't make it today. But I'm thrilled to be able to interact with you. You know, my area is usually New England. So, you know, it's great to be speaking with everybody down in Texas. Yeah, you know, I'll go through my quick career path just because it's very atypical. I am the diplomat in residence for New England, just started about a month ago. Prior to that, I was the special agent in charge of the Diplomatic Security Service Boston field office. And I think that takes a lot of people by surprise because they're used to meeting diplomats in residence who are political officers, public diplomacy officers, consular officers. This is the first time we've had special agents in the role of diplomat in residence. And myself and Chris, the DIR for Texas, Chris is a special agent as well. So, you know, we're really happy to be kind of, you know, entering into this world to talk with you. I have, prior to being the agent in charge of the Boston office, my overseas assignments were in Manila, Philippines. I was in Shanghai, China, and I was in Santiago, Chile. Domestically, I've served in Chicago, Boston. I was at the U.S. Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. I spent 2 years on Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice's protection detail. So in 2 years with Sec State, I traveled to over 50 countries in 2 years with her, 6 out of 7 continents. And I just missed a trip to Antarctica where I would have been 7 for 7 on continents. And I'm still chagrined to this day. So, I mean, that's like around the world and it's been 21 years for me. It seems like yesterday and forever ago. But it kind of gives you a sketch of, you know, where you can go with the State Department and you know, specifically being a Foreign Service specialist like I am.
Great, thank you, Bill. Courtney, could you tell the students the same?
Absolutely. So as Dr. Ferguson's already said, I'm the Deputy District Director for Congresswoman Granger that's here in the district office in Fort Worth. Actually, Joachim has interned with us both in DC and in the district office. So good to see another familiar face. But just as far as career background, not quite as exciting. Haven't been to 6 or 7 continents yet. But I got my undergraduate degrees from North Texas here in town or in Denton, and then law degree from A&M, and did a short stint in real estate while I was getting my undergraduate degrees. and then called up the Congresswoman's office to volunteer and interned with her actually for a little bit. And then they asked me to come on board, and that was almost 7 years ago now. So as far as kind of what we do here, constituent services is the thing in the district office. Of course, working with the Congresswoman, politics and legislation is a huge part. We kind of keep up with what's going on in the district and try to get that information back to our DC office to make sure that we're getting bills passed and funding needed for things that actually affect us here in TX12.
Thank you, Courtney. And what about you, Dana?
All right. Well, again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I believe this is probably the first time I've actually gotten to speak with a TCU panel. So it's very distinguished and very honored to do this. I did not wear purple today. I do apologize. I have that for Friday, my Purple Fridays, but I have been in this role, Assistant City Manager, officially since March of this year. So new to the role, but I'm an old timer with the city of Fort Worth. I started in 1999 and started college in 1989, just to give you a sense of how old I am. And when I started college, I thought I was going to get into engineering. A lot of the people in my family were General Motors. I grew up in Michigan, if you can tell from the accent, not from Texas. And so thought I would get into engineering. But I also had an opportunity to intern with the US Senator's office in Michigan one summer. I actually volunteered. I wasn't paid, but it was good public policy experience. My mother is a public health nurse and dad was an engineer. So I sort of balanced the community mindedness of my mother with the technical thinking and problem solving that my father had. So went to MIT thinking I might stay with engineering, but didn't really care for physics and electrical engineering and differential equations and all kinds of things that I didn't see a lot of practical application for, and was more drawn to, the things happening around me, right? So in Boston at the time, one of the major projects was the Big Dig, which was taking the, yeah. So that was what I think billions of dollars over budget and maybe decades over time in terms of completion, but just how massive public projects can really change the lives of how people move around and how they get access to services. And beginning to think about that got me interested in the field of city planning. I'm also a generalist. I don't tend to like a lot of research and really digging into all of the whys and wherefores, but I am interested in a lot of different topics. I'm interested in the environment. I'm interested in economics. I minored in economics. I'm interested in, just long-term health of a community, interested in, again, the physical realm of how we get around and move around. And so city planning was that field that allowed me to explore being a generalist. And that could be everything from housing to transportation, as I mentioned, the environment and so on. So I decided to go into graduate school as an undergrad and was able to intern for a local municipality and was working with HUD funds in the community development realm. And then decided that with my degree in city planning, I needed to go to a region of the country that was really growing and seeing a lot of change. And Texas, the Southwest is really the place for that. It's also more affordable than California or other parts of the country. So working in the public sector, it's not you're not making the big dollars necessarily, but you do have great health insurance and benefits. And so anyhow, started in city planning and moved to Texas in '99, as I mentioned. Started as a planner and have just worked my way up to I was deputy director of our planning and development department, and then promoted into assistant city manager. So I now work with 5 departments, including the former Planning and Development Department, now called Development Services, Transportation and Public Works, Water, and Property Management, which includes all city property, buildings, fleet vehicles, and then also our libraries is kind of a cool icing on the cake. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Well, I guess to go back in reverse order, Dana, would you say, what kinds of opportunities would you say are available with internships and early career positions for bright, talented undergraduates or maybe recent graduates in your field?
Yeah, so depending on the field, again, say within municipal government, right, there's a huge variety. So municipal governments, much like state and federal governments, are managing it's a multi-business conglomerate, right? There's just all kinds of fields that you can be involved in at the different government levels. And so different departments of the city government have different budgets and different opportunities for internships. In some cases, depending on how the city budgets are doing, they might not pay for those internships. Whereas say in the water department, which is an enterprise fund, has some good funding, they will pay for internships. So it does depend on the cities and the government agencies that you might work for. One of the great ways to be involved is to also work on if you're interested in the political side, working in the mayor's office or volunteering for council members or other elected officials is a great way to learn about the wide variety of community issues that get brought to them, and discerning what's a city role, what's a state role, what's a federal role is all part of the complexity of our lives and how we work through that. And so having that exposure is great, whether it's on the administrative side, working for a city, or on the policy making side of the mayor and council.
Great, thank you. And Courtney, what would you say are some really important internship opportunities or early career opportunities that you'd recommend for someone interested in your career path?
So I definitely encourage anyone interested in working for a member of the House or the Senate really to definitely intern with their offices. As I already mentioned, I interned myself and of course wound up working for the Congresswoman. I think there's 3 current staffers who were interns. Our chief of staff was an intern for the Congresswoman at one point, or former chief of staff, excuse me. So definitely interning. It teaches you the basics. And then whenever we do need a staff assistant or an LC, a legislative correspondent, or anything up the chain, you already know the basics. So that's going to be the first place that we look if we need somebody. Not to mention the sheer amount of knowledge that you gain being near it all. You hear everything. You're the gatekeeper for us. You're usually the first person on the phone with a constituent or whoever's calling to set an appointment with the Congresswoman or anything like that. So definitely intern with either a local office. I know that the DC offices are always looking for interns as well.
Thank you, Courtney. And Bill, I know you mentioned that your career path to being diplomat in residence was a little bit atypical, but what would you recommend for our students? What kinds of early career positions or internships if they one day want to be a diplomat in residence?
So I'm going to echo what the ladies have said about internships and the value of interning. And I would just throw on there that you have to go into it with an open mind, and you can't go into it with a very specific idea of I want to do this, and if I don't get to do that, then I don't want to do it at all. And I think one of the things that you'll find out when you go and intern, in places like the State Department or congressional office is you're going to get assigned tasks that maybe you didn't want or you didn't think about, or, that's not what I'm interested in. And then you're going to find out, oh, wow, this is fascinating. Or, oh, wow, I really hate this. But sometimes knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable as knowing, what your passion is going to be. And I'll talk a little bit more specifically about State Department internships. But one of the things, in our Boston office, we had probably 3 to 6 interns each year. And the interns that we always loved were the ones who came in with an open mind, and the ones who just jumped into everything, whether it was glamorous or not. But what we really watched was, how do you deal with it when you don't get what you want? Right? And are you still positive and optimistic, and you throw yourself into the task? Because those are the people then, when the really good stuff comes later, then you want to take care of those interns. And you're like, you know what? When they didn't get what they wanted, they still did a good job. They still had a good attitude. Like, that's the kind of person that we want. And that applies to city, state, local, federal, whatever you're going to intern with. It's that attitude. That's what people want to see. So I would say I'll paste into the chat room a link. I've already put a couple in about how to find your diplomat in residence. And that one's good to check out because if you're interested in being a special agent, with the State Department, Chris and I are great resources. If you really want to talk to someone who's a consular officer or a political officer, you can check that map, and we have different people in different roles. but I also will post in a link with internship opportunities. And I mean, the State Department we have paid internships, we have unpaid internships, we have fellowships. I mean, I could probably take the rest of the time just talking about all the different opportunities with state. I won't do that except to just say, click the link, go through it. We're really trying to expand the paid internships with an eye to, the understanding is that we get it, that not everybody can go to DC and do an unpaid internship and afford an apartment and to not get paid all summer. You know, it's a real privilege to be able to do that, but we get it that everybody can't. There is a paid internship. It's called the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program, and it goes over the course of 2 years. So, and it's the real focus on that for us is diversity and merit-based. So the first summer you would spend in DC and you would get an orientation into how the State Department works. It's about a 3-week program. And then you would pick which office that you wanted to intern with in DC. And then the next summer you would have an internship in an embassy abroad. So you get to see both sides of the job and how that works. And you're getting paid, right? So you can imagine that's exceptionally competitive. We also have unpaid internships that rotate throughout the year, spring, summer, fall. And those are, you know, a little bit easier to come by. In fact, the deadline for that just ended, was September 16th. But again, all those links will describe, you know, what the deadlines are. And I would just say that whenever you go into these sites, there's always going to be a button that says, keep me informed. If you click that button, then anytime there's an internship opportunity with the State Department or a job vacancy, you'll get an email. And it's a lot easier than trying to, you know, always go on and check websites and figure out when's this going to open up. And then we also have something called the Virtual Student Internship Program. This one is cool because you don't need a security clearance. Sometimes the security clearance process can be difficult, especially if you've got like a ton of international travel. It might take the State Department a long time to get your background check done. But virtual students, you don't need a clearance, and you can do it from anywhere. So I don't know, are you guys remote right now?
Some students are remote and some
Yeah.
students are in person.
So if you're remote, you're not on campus and you still wanted to get involved, you know, that's a great one. And you can do that, you know, for any embassy in the world or the main State Department. Again, that one expired in July, but if you click on the link, you'll get notified of when the next ones are coming. And then we have fellowships. So if you decide you want to go to grad school, we have 2 really great fellowships, the Pickering and the Wrangell fellowships. Again, we're looking for diversity with the State Department. It's a real focus for us. We want the workforce to be representative of everyone in America, right? So Pickering and Wrangell are looking for diverse candidates. So if you want to go to grad school and you want to work for the State Department after, Pickering, they're almost the same. And the application process is about the same time. It closes mid-October. The difference between the two is that if you got a Pickering fellowship, you would have your first internship at the State Department in the summer, and then overseas at an embassy. With Wrangell, that's you would start with your internship on the Hill, and you would see how does the State Department interact with Congress, right? And you know, how does that whole thing work? And certainly Courtney can tell you that it's complicated, but it's a fascinating internship, right? And then you would go overseas and then you would see it from the embassy side. And then, you know, each one of these fellowships has their own requirements, but if you got one of these, your grad school would be paid for, but you would have to work in the State Department for 5 years to repay that. And then lastly, we have a fellowship if you're IT focused. It's called the Foreign Affairs IT Fellowship. And again, same thing, right? They would pay for your grad school. It's a little more flexible. They would also pay for your undergrad, 2 years of undergrad as well. But that's one you can check out on the website. So that just right there, you know, is like 6 or 7 different opportunities for interning with state.
Thank you, Bill. So you kind of hit on this a little bit, Bill, in various ways, and Dana, you and Courtney did as well. But could each of you talk a little bit more about the importance of maybe graduate study for your particular career path? Is getting a master's or law degree or PhD, is that something that's important to do while you were engaged in kind of your early career or before? Courtney, I know you have some good perspective on this. What would you tell the students?
So for just my personal experience, I actually worked for the Congresswoman while I was in law school. So I did both at the same time, and I don't necessarily recommend it. It's a lot of work, not a lot of sleep. But that being said, I don't regret it either. So having an advanced degree in this field, you're going to be immediately more respected whenever you walk into a room. I mean, you have the education base, you have the knowledge base. Not that an undergraduate degree isn't worth something, it's worth a lot. We have the hill of, I would say, probably 50-50, honestly, who do and don't have postgraduate degrees. So the big thing really, whenever you come in, for us is just, as Bill has already said, it's having that good attitude and being willing to, even if you get a law degree, if you're going to DC specifically, you're not going to be working on legislation when you first get out of law school. You're going to be a staff assistant. You might be a legislative correspondent if you're really lucky. So just kind of keeping that in mind, you've got to kind of weigh the cost benefit there. In the district office, it certainly was beneficial for me because I wasn't living in DC. I didn't have to worry about that kind of rent on top of paying for school. And of course, I was able to work here for the Congresswoman.
Thank you, Courtney. And Dana, I know you have a master's in city planning. Was that something that you would consider essential for someone who wants to go into a career like yours?
Yeah, so I think it may depend on what level of work you're interested in ultimately doing. So to start out as say a planner working for whatever level of government, or even for a private consulting firm, you don't necessarily have to have a master's degree. But just to talk specifically about city planning for a minute, that field is not something where you typically find an undergraduate degree that's specific to city planning or regional planning or that kind of specificity, if you will. So we would find folks who maybe have a bachelor's degree in political science or geography or maybe engineering or perhaps economics, or anyway, there's a number of different undergraduate fields. And so the master's degree in city planning or regional planning or urban studies really does help demonstrate that that's the field that you're interested in, and that then sets you apart in terms of competing for jobs. So switching to the public administration side, I believe that's fairly similar. I'm not as familiar with all of the university offerings on public administration, but most of what I see are people pursuing their master's in public administration in order to advance within local government. So in order to be an assistant city manager, I don't have a master's in public administration. I have the master's in city planning, but others would typically have that MPA in order to show that they've got that particular knowledge and interest in government finance and budgeting, as well as infrastructure and all of the issues that go into the government side of operations. And so I do think the master's really does set you apart as you're trying to advance within an organization, and not necessarily required to start out, but certainly something that's very important to move ahead.
Thank you, Dana. And Bill, you have a master's degree in both national security studies and international relations. Would you say those are things that students who are interested in the Foreign Service should definitely consider pursuing kind of as they're looking into that career path, or maybe mid-career?
Grant, would you be surprised if I told you that you don't even need a college degree to be a US diplomat?
I would be.
You don't. You do not need to have a college degree. If you can pass the Foreign Service test without a college degree, then we're thrilled to have you. If you can make it through the test and the orals and the whole screening process, then fantastic, right? I mean, because the thing is, we're not looking for credentials. We're looking for someone who can think critically. We're looking for somebody who can have good judgment in a crisis. We're looking for someone who can adapt to different cultures, right? I mean, they're not really tangible things that, you know, if you have a college degree, you can definitely do this. Now, the ironic thing is, to be a special agent with the State Department, you do need a college degree, right? So what you'll find is when you go, so you can be the ambassador without a degree, but to be the special agent in the embassy, you need to have a degree. So for a lot of foreign service specialist jobs, you know, what I do, and, you know, specialists at an embassy, you're talking about like the doctors, the nurses, psychiatrists, the facilities manager, the people who take care of the building, the people who handle the IT, the security engineering officers, the people who actually like build the embassies and make sure, you know, there aren't microphones in, you know, in the walls. You know, they all have their different requirements, right? And every one of those, the base requirement is a college degree. So what I'll say to you is, so I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I went to a Westfield State College, state school in Massachusetts. And I didn't have anybody showing me the way. You know, I was just kind of like, you know, I was the first one. So I was making it up as I was going along. And my undergrad degree was in history, which it served me well in a few areas. I learned to write succinctly, and I learned to analyze information. And so, you know, I had some good building blocks, but I didn't, you know, all I knew was I wanted to see the world, but I didn't know how. So for me, that's what graduate school gave me, right? I had a goal, like, okay, I want to get around, I want to see everything. So when I went to Boston University, got a degree in international relations. Then I met all of these professors of practice. You know, there were ambassadors, you know, from the State Department there. We had a 4-star general, General Werner, who was the head of the Southern Command when Operation Just Cause happened. My advisor was with the CIA for 30 years. We had, you know, other military, you know, we had military foreign area officers that were going through the program. So like a whole world opened up to me, and I had no idea all of these opportunities existed. So grad school gave me that, right? And I wouldn't be in the job that I'm in right now if I didn't go to grad school and open my aperture. But that's just how I did it, right? You can open your, I mean, you guys are, I think almost everybody's an undergrad that we're talking to, and you're already on a call like this. So you're already being aware of internships and opportunities and all these different things. So you're way ahead of where I was. So, I mean, but whatever you can do to keep getting exposed to different career paths and different ideas and different jobs, it's only going to benefit you. So for me, that's what grad school was. I'm the 19th badge in my family, right? So, you know, when I found out that I could become a special agent, still be a diplomat, see the whole world, but still respect my family tradition, that was like the clouds parted and a ray of sun shone down on me. And I was like, this is what I will do. And I was lucky I got to do it, right? So, and then later on in my career, through the State Department paid for me to get another master's degree at the Naval War College. And then that was full circle, you know, to be a kid who hadn't traveled anywhere or done anything, only read about things, you know, talking about these with all these professors of practice and people who had done all these amazing things. Now I got to go back and actually having, you know, lived the foreign service life, I could actually like contribute to the conversations, right? And then to become the diplomat in residence in my hometown, now it's completely full circle, right? And I've gone back to the college, you know, where I was a grad student, you know, looking around like, you know, oh wow, can you tell me about foreign policy? And now I'm the guy that people are asking, right? And what I remind them all is, you don't have to be an Ivy League school person, you know, to be a diplomat, right? Like I said, we want diplomats that represent America. You know, state school. You know, I took classes at community college to get through state school, and you know, but we want diversity of not just ethnic diversity, right? We want diversity of viewpoint, geographic diversity. We want people from the middle of the country. You know, when you send somebody overseas as a diplomat and you want to explain, like, how do Americans think? It's not just like bi-coastal Ivy League Americans. We're like, no, look, like, can you explain agriculture and how that's important and how does that fit in to foreign commercial activity, or for, congressmen, when the CODELs go overseas, right? That's the information that Congress people are looking for, right? What do I bring back to our constituency? How do I explain, our foreign policy, interactions, and how do they benefit people at home? So really, it's every person will figure out how do you open up your aperture, and maybe it's grad school, but maybe it's an internship somewhere, or maybe it's plunging into a career, that you weren't really sure about. But I will say, your 20s, that's what your 20s are for. To try all those different, I call it like the Whitman sampler of life. I don't know, those chocolate boxes, where you have all different chocolates, right? And this is your time in your 20s to try them all and then find out what you want to eat for the rest of your career.
Thank you, Bill. Well, I have some other questions that I could ask, but since we're about halfway through our time, I think it'd be great to open it up to questions from our students. So if you have a question, go ahead and use the little hand raise tool, and I'll recognize you, and then you can go ahead. Be bold, it's all right.
So I just want to ask this. I know that since it's U.S. Department and it's stuff to do with the U.S., so definitely they don't hire people that are not U.S. citizens. And I'm doing an international relations minor. I just wanted to get into international diplomacy, but I don't know what the route to that would be, since I'm not probably going to be working for the US since I'm not a citizen here. So is there a path that you can advise a person to take if they are trying to work for the UN or for all these other international organizations? It's still a diplomat, but not necessarily as a US diplomat per se.
So yes, you're right? So the internships and the employment, the basic requirement for all of that is US citizenship, right? So that's off the table. But one of the things that you can explore to get experience is volunteering at the US Embassy, or volunteering potentially, or working, right, with the US Embassy in the country where you're from, right? So again, a lot of people don't realize this, but the State Department's made up, we have 70,000 people in the State Department. Of those 70,000, 40,000 are foreign citizens. They're the people that live in the countries where we have our embassies and consulates. So, in an embassy, when I was in Santiago, Chile, the head of all the offices are Americans, right? But the people who really know the country and the politics and the security situation and all that, they're all Chileans. So they're all Chileans that we hire to work in the embassy and to give us their local expertise and knowledge. So you could get a job working at the US Embassy, in the country that you're from, and get experience that way. And again, everything I just said, an embassy is like a small city. So any job you can think of that you need in a city, an embassy has, right? From, the ambassador, the political officers, the special agents, or the law enforcement aspect, but facilities, drivers, everything that makes a city go, we have. So all of those opportunities are there. Then you brought up UN, so that I can't really speak to closely, except to say that, yes, there are plenty of opportunities. I'm not conversant, but I think it's probably like a Google search away, right? How do I work for the UN? Bam, there you go. You could get great experience that way as well.
Thank you.
Grant, I stunned them into silence.
I guess so. I have that happen sometimes too. Kim, do you have a thought?
I do. I guess I don't know where the hand raising button is. I know where the clap and the thumbs up is, but anyway, so I just thought I'd raise my hand. I know, Bill, you gave us a good description of what you do, in your role. I would love to hear the same from Courtney and Dana. What's a day in the life for each of you? And what are some of the skills that you would recommend students develop that would cross over any majors, taking into account kind of what a day in the life is like for you?
Yeah, so a day in the life for me specifically is a little bit different every day. Whenever I first started with a congresswoman and I was doing casework, the cases would be different every day, but the day was relatively the same. You'd, of course, get the call, figure out what the issue is, research the issue, and then hopefully work with the agency to get the issue resolved, or at least get to a point where the constituent and the agency are on the same page. Now as deputy director, again, every day is different. So I do a little bit of casework. It's kind of depends on what the congresswoman needs that day. So for instance, today I'm on this panel. Yesterday I was driving the congresswoman around. Over the weekend, it was just answering emails. So every day is going to be a little bit different. And it's hard to say exactly what it is, but primarily it's just making sure that things are running smoothly for the congresswoman, that the constituency is happy, their issues are being resolved and addressed and resolved as quickly and efficiently as possible. Going out into the district, meeting members of the community and making sure that we know what's going on. The pandemic was a prime example of that. Of course, we passed the first coronavirus bill and had trillions of dollars, and no one knew how to access those trillions of dollars. And so it was our job to figure out, who needs it, how do we get it to them as quickly as possible. And with the congresswoman's role specifically and her position in Congress, we had direct access to Steve Mnuchin. So it was really important that we make sure that everything was handled properly, and we were able to work with the small business owners and the banks and the community directly, so that we knew that they were getting what they needed when they needed it, and the money wasn't just going to these big banks like it was initially. And as far as just standing out, the best thing that I could say to work on is people skills. One of the first things that we have interns do is answer the phone. Day one, you're answering the phones, and by the end of it, you love it, but day one, it's usually not your favorite job because you've never done it. This generation doesn't talk on the phone. So by the end of it, we have an exit interview here in the district office, and we always ask what the favorite, least and best part of the internship was. And it's almost always answering phones, because again, you get to know the constituents. We have people who call every day, and they get to know their interns and know everything about them, and the interns know everything about the constituents. So definitely work on people skills, make sure that you know how to connect with people in person and on the phone. And then just kind of, Bill's already said it, but being willing to do things that you maybe don't want to do, but you're still going to do it to the best of your ability. I kind of make a joke that the reason that I got this job was because I learned how to take the mail out on my own on my first day as an intern, because no one had ever just done the mail. I read the manual and did the mail the way that it's supposed to be done. And you would think that I had reinvented the wheel the way that everyone reacted to it. So, but they never had an intern who just read the instructions and did what they were supposed to do. So those are my two big pieces of advice: is definitely work on connecting with people. Your people skills are huge. And then just being willing to do the little things.
What would you say, Dana?
Sure. So I definitely agree with the skills that Bill and Courtney have touched on. And I'm going to start there, actually, the communication and the connecting with people, as well as critical thinking and judgment. And related to that is listening. And so even now, I'm trying to think about, well, what am I going to say? Right? How am I going to sound smart to you all? And so, but you want to be sure that you're listening to the other person that you're talking to, and trying to hold off on having the smart, witty answer or the comeback or the solution, and cutting someone off. And so that's a big part of that relationship building, is making sure that people, particularly at the city level, similar to what Courtney deals with, you've got constituents or residents or businesses who are coming to you who maybe have never dealt with the city before. And so wherever you are in the organization, I mean, we have nearly 7,000 employees at the city of Fort Worth, right? So they might run into you on the street or wherever on the phone, and they call a number or from a website, and they've never dealt with the city government before. They aren't really clear what we do. They just have a problem or have an issue or have a question. And so being willing to listen carefully and also asking good questions, and, prompting folks to help think through what are they really trying to get at, what's really their issue, and helping them then get to the right folks to help solve their problems. So in terms of my current job as an assistant city manager, I spend a lot of time signing documents. No, that's just one piece of it. So we do, as you can imagine, with a city that's as large as Fort Worth, we have a lot of agreements, a lot of contracts, a lot of things happening for internal services and external services that we just have a lot of folks and businesses that we work with who are both serving the city or indirectly serving residents and businesses. So it is good to be good at reading, reading contracts, reading, like Courtney said, reading the instructions for how to do something. So being able to read through something and get the gist of it, get the main point. A big part of what I do is to take complex information and try to make it digestible, both for myself so that I can retain it and understand what it means if I need to repeat it in the future, but also to explain to our citizens and our city council. So you want to be able to help folks who are making decisions make the best decision that they can. So a lot of our job is as advisors. So we're advising decision makers on what to do, and it may be at the board or commission level or at the city council level. And so being good advisors is part of that. So it might be as you're, as silly as, are the bullets in your PowerPoint really clear and concise, or the maps or the tables and the charts, are you really graphically making the best case that you can? Is it concise and yet visually compelling? Are you telling a good story? And so helping to, particularly if you're maybe sort of trying to advocate for something. So in local government, the city of Fort Worth has a city manager, mayor and council city manager form of government. So the city manager reports to the city council. It's not a strong mayor. And so the nice thing about the city manager form of government is that the staff are the professionals who tend to be with the organization for more than an election cycle. So you tend to have some professional integrity and be able to have that technical skill and professional knowledge to bring to bear to your work. But you also still need to be politically sensitive, politically aware to what's happening. What are the needs and challenges of your decision makers? What are they hearing from, their constituents and their voters in some cases, right? In some cases it's the voters, in some cases it's the campaign contributors. Whatever it may be, you need to be politically aware and sensitive while still maintaining your professional integrity to give the best advice you can. And so being able to communicate in that compelling way that doesn't lose people too quickly is a good way to help get the decisions that make our community better and make our lives better.
Grant, before you go on to the next one, I just want to tack on to what Dana and Courtney were saying. And I would say for all of you, one thing I would suggest right now is the importance of public speaking and forcing yourself to speak publicly, especially like while you're in a relative, a pretty safe academic environment. But, Dana was talking about, distilling all this, complex information and being able to communicate it to somebody. But if you can only do that in writing, and when they ask you to brief, you go to pieces, that's not going to serve you well in your career. And I know a lot of people professionally who can't brief. And I was shocked when I just went through the Naval War College a few years ago, and I had all of these just brilliant professors who couldn't brief, right? They couldn't communicate this incredible information and knowledge they had to the students. And we were professionals, right? We were there to learn. And some of these people were losing us. So what I'm saying is you have to practice public speaking, right? And I think I read there's a statistic, something like 70% of the population in the US would rather be tortured than speak publicly. People really don't like it, and it makes a lot of people nervous, but it's really something that if you want to set yourself apart from other people and you're a confident public speaker, even if you don't know what the hell you're talking about, but you can say it with confidence. But I'm not going to cite any politicians here, but I'm just saying, if you can master that skill, you can go quite far in your career. But it starts now. because the longer you kind of let that skill atrophy, the harder it is to pick it up and to master it. So, you know, while you're in college, I wish I did more briefing as an undergrad, right? And I talked about being a history major and really learning how to write and analyze, but I wasn't, you know, a confident public speaker. And, you know, there's a lot you can do at this stage to remedy that so that when you get into the professional world, you know, you'll really be a leg up. Thanks.
That is terrific advice, Bill. And if you are interested in opportunities for public speaking while you're at TCU, I encourage you to get involved in different kinds of extracurricular activities that emphasize that. That could be moot court or Model UN in political science, a variety of opportunities in communications and other departments. I believe we have a TCU Toastmasters Club, although I don't know anything about it. And just take advantage of all the different opportunities. If somebody in a group project needs to speak, make sure it's you. If you have the opportunity to give a presentation as opposed to writing a report, if you're confident already in your writing skills, go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity to give a class presentation. Even if it's never going to be your favorite thing, if you're good at it, that sets you apart from so many other people, as I think all of our panelists would say. What questions do you have? Take advantage of this next opportunity, as Kim shared in the chat.
I see Miranda White's got her hand raised in the hand raise function.
Go ahead, Miranda.
All right, I do have a question for Bill about the State Department. So I was listening and I wanted to know if you had any choice in location or if it was primarily assignment based or if there were any other positions within the State Department where you get a little bit more leeway into where you're going or a little bit more structure.
Sure. Civil service jobs within the State Department provide that structure, right? Generally speaking, civil service jobs are domestic jobs, and a lot of them center in the DC area. But there are opportunities throughout the country at passport and visa centers throughout the country. There are diplomatic security field offices in almost every big city in the US. So from a civil service standpoint, yeah, you could, and you would stay in the same location for the duration of your career. When you start to talk about foreign service, generalist and specialist positions, it gets a lot more difficult, right? So if you're a foreign service generalist, and that would mean you're a political, economic, public diplomacy, consular, or management track, your first two assignments are directed. So they will give you a list of maybe 10 or 12 locations, and you can ask you for your preference. And generally speaking, you'll get something on your list, but that's a 2-year overseas assignment. And then your second overseas assignment happens the same way. And that's in those tracks, those are both consular, I beg your pardon. First one is a consular. So everybody has to issue visas. It's kind of like Courtney talked about, you know, the initiation of being the one who answers the phone. Like you have to go through that rite of passage to you know, be able to go on further in your career. And then for specialists, they're all different. You know, for special agents, generally our first assignment is a domestic field office. So I started in Chicago. And then your second assignment is overseas at an embassy, and those are 2-year assignments. Again, with a bid list. People anxiously every summer wait for the list to come out to see what jobs are going to be available and what you're going to bid on. And I would say in my 21-year career, I never didn't get something on my list. But my assignments have ranged from 1 year, 2 year. I've had 1-year assignments, 2-year assignments, and 3-year assignments. Shanghai was 3 years with a year down in DC learning Mandarin. And Santiago was 3 years with a year of DC learning Spanish. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So I have a question. I am obviously a non-traditional student. I will probably be going in at city level, local government level. Do you have any advice for me on how to, I'm going to be competing with all these other younger folks out here. How do I make myself stand out and kind of have a leg up on them? It's something I've learned over the last few years is I have always I've got a long history of working at one place for a long time, and that has changed over, the last generation or so. To me, that's odd. My next job I would like to go to, find a good company, find a good place to work and retire from. And I feel like that is not the norm anymore. So how do I compete with, what would help me with competing with these younger guys and ladies and gentlemen that will help me?
Sure. Well, I'm not familiar with your background, but certainly whatever skills and work experience you have now does, in my mind, does give you a leg up compared to someone who's coming out of university with maybe just an internship. Now, they would maybe argue that the internship might be, say, directly in local government or whatever field they're pursuing, and so it's more directly relevant. But I would definitely encourage you to draw on your years of experience with the work you have been doing and the skills that you've achieved with that. And then depending on sort of what area of either local government or other government you're interested in, or again, maybe it's consulting, I'm not sure, then that I think would help inform what experiences you try to get now, right? Prior to going into that work field. So I will say that in municipal government, the turnover is lower than it is in the private sector. And so there is more stability there, again, for better or worse, depending on, as long as we're recruiting great folks and we want them to stay as long as they can. But part of our mantra is that we want to have people who can compete for other jobs and could leave us at any time, right? But we offer the benefits to keep people with the city. So we try to be competitive that way. But yeah, I would say that, and you and I can talk separately offline if you're interested, but to talk further about what kinds of departments are looking for what kinds of things and what would be the role. Is it more technical? Is it numbers? Budget accounting skills? Is it more on just general management? Is it maybe again helping or working directly with an elected official? Right, there's a number of different ways to come at it, as well as obviously the law degrees or being a police officer or those kinds of things that are very very specialized. But certainly there's a lot of local governments around. There's a lot of 40 some municipalities in Tarrant County alone. Fort Worth just happens to be the big one, and so there's a lot of opportunities there. And so also in terms of maybe your local knowledge, right? If you're from Texas, if you're from this area, then your local knowledge of places or people or neighborhoods or businesses, all of that is a way to help stand apart from someone like myself, right? Who's a Yankee, came in from Michigan and Massachusetts and, didn't say y'all correctly or might could or fixin' to or all the things that I should be doing. So, that I didn't have the local knowledge that was very valuable. Bill talked about visiting 50 countries. We have 300 neighborhoods right in Fort Worth, and just knowing the local leaders is really helpful for certain kinds of work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I actually just want to piggyback off of what Dana had said there, that I know Grant has sent us a few non-traditional students, and they've always turned out to be, as far as our interns go anyways, fantastic, because just like I said before, you already know what you need to do to get in the door. You interview well, you have the communication skill set from your previous jobs. You already know, a lot of times they've done some form of hiring or they've worked with other people, so they know what skills that they liked in their coworkers, and they tend to kind of copy those skills and use those there. So we always end up, I don't think we've ever not hired a non-traditional after the interviews, just because, like I said, they interview so well, they already know a lot of the skill sets. So that's a huge asset that gives you a leg up over some of the students for sure.
Also, Mike, don't give up on the State Department. We get a lot of second career people come to State Department. Specifically, a lot of retired military got people, have done their 20 years, they've gotten out, and they come to state and have a whole full second career. And it's a kind of an interesting thing because it melds the two things that you talked about, you know, where the model now is people jump around to different jobs. And you were saying, you know, you'd want to stay with one place and retire with that job. With the State Department, I've had 13 different jobs in 21 years, but my pension's coming from the State Department. You know, so it's a career, but you know, every 2 to 3 years, my job changes, and you know, for better and worse, right? You know, when you really love it, you know, you're really reluctant to go. But when things stink, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, you're moving on to the next thing. And you can always reinvent yourself, you know. So that's kind of, you know, one of the really interesting things about the State Department. And I'll just say that it all depends. The people who come as a second career to the State Department, the ones who can be humble, do well, the ones who kind of bring the trappings of whatever their first career was with them. And then when they're put on the consular line and they're doing the grunt work and they're thinking in their head, I'm better than this, why am I doing this? Then it's a rough ride. You know, I mean, you have to kind of be willing to, you know, to take your lumps and go through it in a new career. But I've seen people really thrive and love it. So something to think about.
If I can jump in here just for a moment, I think one thing that Bill and Courtney and Dana have all highlighted that's really something that you should think about if you're considering government service and considering different opportunities is, I'm about to sneeze, but I'm going to avoid it. Anyway, is the amazing benefits and retirement packages that can come with government service. Generally speaking, working for your state, local, or national government for a long time has great retirement benefits, great health insurance. And so while I know many of you are not thinking about retirement in this particular moment, it really is wonderful to work someplace that gives you really terrific health insurance and you save a lot of money. TCU gives us very good health insurance that I'm fortunate to benefit from and retirement stuff too. And that really is a huge perk that I think sometimes people miss when they're considering a career working for various levels of government, and something that I think is really worth highlighting. One other thing I'd like to do, because I want to respect our panelists' time and yours as well and end on time, I'd like to introduce you to Kara Davis. If you've not met Ms. Davis before, she is the career consultant for Adirond College of Liberal Arts, and she is a terrific person here with us. And if you have any questions, she and Kim are great people to talk to. Kara, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself to some of our students who may not know you already?
Yeah, I see some students that I have definitely worked with on the call. I want to thank Bill, Courtney, and Dana for being here this afternoon. I think this has been great. And yeah, I would just really encourage every student to set up an appointment with me if y'all have anything to talk about regarding internship search, job, resume, and if you want to talk anything more in depth about what any of them covered this afternoon, more of the internship opportunities. I know I learned a lot today. But yeah, I just really encourage y'all to come to the Career Center for anything professional and career development related.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the last thing I'll say before we kind of wish our panelists farewell is, in the event you do get an internship with a nonprofit or government office, and you are interested potentially in receiving upper level political science credit for it through a guided internship program, you should get in touch with me at grant.ferguson@tcu.edu, and we can see if you are eligible for our civic literacy internship program. And I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Let's go ahead and have a round of applause for our awesome panelists.
Thanks so much for having us. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it.
It's great to get to talk to all of you, and I know our students really appreciated it. Thank you so much for taking your time, and I hope we get a chance to work together in the future.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Grant, for moderating as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you, Grant.
Bye, y'all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dana, while you're still on,